How's everyone doing? Happy week after Easter. You know what they called today? They called today Empty Pew Sunday. We proved them wrong. I thought that was so, thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. I thought that was so funny when I looked that up. And I'm particularly interested in the week after Easter. To me, in many ways, it's the most important day. It's the most important day. Why? Because, well, I'm not really sure why. I haven't thought that part out yet. But we're going to talk about it today and why that is. Because there's a bishop, Bishop Carlton Pearson, who I really like, and I think it was the Sunday after Easter last year that I mentioned him to you. And he has a ministry that is named after a movie that was about him. And the movie about him was called Come Sunday. And it was about a minister. It was his life story where he was, a protege of Oral Roberts. He was in a very traditional Christian conversation and theology. And one day he had a realization that he couldn't preach the doctrine as it was being given because it separated some people out. And as he was true to what his message was, he was canceled. And that's something that Jesus experienced that we've been studying as well. And seems to be a thing that we think is a recent development, but it is not. That when we bump up against mutually agreed upon definitions of how we are to be in this experience of life. And when we bump up against those definitions, those identities, those ways of being, and we realize it no longer works for us, it no longer rings as true, it can be calamitous. It can create chaos. And the people who you've been dancing with and experiencing life with may not know what to do and what to make of it. So they might try to make you go away. It takes courage to live our lives according to the truth that we know, which is our fifth unity principle. It takes courage to do that. It takes courage to be walking in the world, but to walk with a reverent air and know that you are not of it. And so his ministry is actually called Come Monday. Because we can talk about this all day long on Sunday, but who are you going to be tomorrow? And who are you going to be after a resurrection? Are we all going to fall asleep now until Christmas? Not here. Not in this community. Not in this sanctuary. Not with this minister. We're going to continue on in the trajectory that was demonstrated for us and live the resurrected life. Now, we think that because, like a resurrection is one and done, just like a crucifixion is one and done. But I would suggest that in our lives, at least in my own life, I seem to rinse and repeat quite often. Wash, rinse, and repeat, I guess it would be, right? And so we must have the ideal, our mind, our eye, stayed upon the resurrected life, and to begin to stop identifying with the life that believes it's separate. You see, when we fell asleep, we didn't fall asleep alone. We fell asleep in relationship. We held the hand of a brother or a sister, and we decided to experience what it might be like if we could imagine a life separate from God. And what we have made in a collective agreement after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Because we're so powerful. It doesn't mean we're weak. Look how powerful we are. Look at what we've made. All through imagination. But we can imagine something else. We can imagine ourselves as a Christ, as a resurrected being. And all that simply means, and I'm going to quote this, is that we are reconstructing the self, the capital S self, the higher self, if you will, from imagining the absence of the divine to integrating it all as the divine. So all we are doing when we say that we are awakening is that we're awakening from an illusion that imagines the absence of love, the absence of God, the absence of the divine, the absence of the remembrance of our identity. And we're waking up to the remembrance of love as being all that there is. The remembrance, the recognition, the remembering again who we are, what we are, how we serve as love. I had a realization on this platform since I've been here, so I don't know exactly when it's been, but it's so fairly recent, year and a half, sometime in the last year and a half. I used to, as a person called to ministry, when that first happened, I thought, oh no, not me, not going to do it. There is no way. There's no way I'm going to do it because I don't want to act as if I'm holier than thou. And I hope I don't do that. I don't like that. I don't want hierarchy, had enough patriarchy. You know, I guess I might represent more of a matriarchy, but had enough of that, didn't want to be a part of that. And then as I continued to walk this path, because you see when you're called to something, it's never what you really think it's about. You know, it's kind of a bait and switch. It's like something happens and it says, walk in this direction. Here's your heart's desire. Here's something you might be good at. Here's something you like to do. And so you start walking in that direction only to find out it was really about something else. And it has nothing to do with exactly what I'm doing right now, but it does have to do with awakening. It does have to do with remembering who I am, what I am, and how I serve. And that will be true and is true of you. And our callings all look different. But I remember there's this weird thing that happens when you take on what they call the mantle of ministry. Because what's happening right now, and what happens, is that everybody might be looking up here and listening up here, but you're all seeing something different. And you're all hearing something different. And you might think you know what's going on here, right? And that's called projection, right? And I thought, well, man, I'm not really sure I want to take that on. That feels like a lot. I'm not sure I want to do that. Only to come to find out that that's what we're all doing all the time anyway, no matter what you choose to do. And no matter what relationships you choose to be in. It's happening all the time. But what I remember is also thinking, who am I to do that? Who am I to do that? Who am I to get up here and say these beautiful, wonderful things, but then I, just like the rest of us, go out in the world and might lose my temper or might forget about who I am, or more importantly, who you are. And I remember thinking, I would catch myself saying, like even a joke, and say, well, that's not very ministerial. So I was like having this identity crisis, like trying to really figure out who I am in this type of role. And one day I had the realization as that the person that you see up here, the one who's speaking in this way, the one who's committed her life to this, that's the real me. And the one who stumbles and falls and has her human foibles and forgets who she is, that's the one I thought I was. So I had it reversed. And I want you to explore whether you might have it reversed too. Whether we might have it reversed. That we've come to identify ourselves with our past. We've come to identify ourselves with the separated self and separated others, thinking that's what's real. And then we have those flashes and moments of love and kumbaya, and we come in here and we hold hands and we sing. And we think, oh, that's fleeting, but that's the real thing. That's what is real. And we come in and we touch that. We drink of the divine. We touch the hem of that. And we keep doing it. We do it again and again and again until we can remember the truth of who we are. And so the truth of who we are is that Christ itself, the Christ principle. And the reading said the more that we dedicate ourselves to that Christ principle, like let's review what is the Christ principle. Is it about Jesus? Kinda, but it predates Jesus. Jesus became the example of what it could be. He became the example. And how we took that story is we made him an exception. And the reason the resurrected life is a more important dialogue now, after Easter, is because now it's like our turn. Who are we going to be? What are we going to be? How are we going to serve as a remembrance of our divine self, the Christ of our being? That means the principle of the remembrance that you are not now, nor ever have been separate from the Creator. That in this holy moment, this holy instant, and every moment is holy, every instant is holy in this remembrance. God and I are one. Love and I are one. Peace and I are one. Take a breath here. As Christ, as being Christ-like, as committed to walking in that demonstration, as Christ, I know who I am. I know who I am as spirit. I'm not a body. This isn't a body. This body is my vehicle in this experience, but I will lay this body down. But who I am is spirit, unlimited and free, which is why we can say in unity, we're fearless, we're unlimited, because we recognize ourselves as spirit first. We identified there first. We had a dream of separation. But we're one. We're one with God. We're one with all that is. You can't pluck yourself out of the mind and heart of that which created you. So the Christ is the one who knows this as spirit. And then as spirit, we are unlimited and free, and that we get to decree a thing, and it is so. That is what the Christ does. When we abide as Christ, we watch the landscape. And like the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, we're like, oh yeah, I'm the dreamer of the dream. I'm the one who's making this or creating this, contingent upon what my decision is. Is it oneness or two-ness? The Christed being, the resurrected self, has made the decision that we're going to live our life from this point forward as one. God and I are one. And we're going to align again and again and again with that new decision. This is the cornerstone of our lives upon which everything else is built. And guess what happens when we do this? You're going to have this wonderful experience of getting to know the real you. That other one was an imposter. Hijacked by the idea of separation, had a great personality. But guess what? That great personality gets to come along because nothing's outside of this oneness. That great personality gets to come along. All your gifts and skills get to come along. Even those things that Charles Fillmore would call are of the carnal mind, the separate mind, they get to come along and be integrated into the whole of what we are. There's nothing outside of God, and no aspect of us is outside of God. You don't like the word God, outside of love, outside of creator, outside of being, outside. Nothing is outside of it. This is an inclusive experience of walking as Christ, the resurrected life. And what's going to happen is people aren't going to recognize you. They might not know who you are. Your family might be a little off balance with you. You're dancing a little bit different. Your steps different. They don't know how to move anymore in your vicinity. It might be awkward. This material that I'm studying from right now from Paul Sella called Resurrection talks about what we've been talking about. This is a revolution, which simply means to turn. We're turning to the thought system of one, of oneness. And he says something like, and revolutions are not always polite. They're not always polite. They don't always align with the mutually agreed upon definitions of the mind of separation. So it might cause some waves, is what I'm trying to say. Most importantly, it might within you. We're getting to know ourselves, our higher selves again. And you get to create therefrom. Our past is not our precedence. Who you thought you were, you can let go of. The greatest gift that we can give to ourselves, the greatest gift that we can give to our brother and sister is let go of our idea of who they are based upon the past. Greatest gift. What if you met everyone who walks in this door, everyone in your family, as if you've never met them before? What if you looked in the mirror every day and really looked into the eyes and let yourself greet yourself anew from love? I got the honor and the privilege to meet my great nephew this past week. I got to hold this little baby, 3 months old, and look into the eyes of a fresh new face. And it was wonderful. And we had a little conversation. And it was a wonderful conversation. He was wiggling and moving and bright and absorbing everything. But that little conversation that I had with him, because it seemed like maybe we couldn't really talk like you and I are talking right now, reminded me of conversations I had with my parents. One when he was unconscious as he was releasing his body, and another as she. And I could have a conversation with them, and I could have a conversation with this little baby. I know who you are. I know you're from Spirit. What was it like? I know you were just there. What was it like? Like it is somewhere else, because we do think it's somewhere else. It feels that way, doesn't it? Sometimes. I know what you are. I know how you serve. and I could see the promise within him. And it's so easy to see the innocence in a little baby, but can we see it in ourselves? Can we look in the mirror and let ourselves off the hook and others for who we think we've been? Right? So as I'm looking at this baby and everybody's around it, because everybody's like, oh, all the people around, and there's, mommy, and there's daddy, and my sister is Mimi, and the other grandma is Lala. And I'm like, what am I? Who am I? Aunt Claudia? Great Aunt Claudia? Hi, baby, I'm Great Aunt Claudia. And he's just like looking, and I'm like, Great Aunt Claudia. Gack. I'm going to be Gack. And I thought, well, I want to be Gacky, so I'm Gacky. And the minute I said Gack, he giggled. So I'm Gacky. You get to make it up, my friends. Might as well have fun with it. So Great Aunt Claudia is Gacky. When you look in the mirror, what are you going to call yourself? You can change your name. You can change the narrative that you have given to you. This is what the resurrected life is. That in every moment you remember you are holy. Now, you're not going to be more holy. You weren't more holy as that little baby, which we tend to think. And you're not going to be more holy tomorrow. And guess what? You don't have to wait till Christmas or Palm Sunday or Holy Week or Lent. What are you going to do today? Who are we going to be now? So the resurrection is the re-knowing of the idea of being. We're going to re-know ourselves. You're going to have this wonderful relationship of getting to know ourselves again. The experience of the self in a new state, a process of revoking the old, that's the crucifixion, and invoking and remembering the new. And seeing what is true in the context of what is not true. That's all we're doing. We're seeing who we are in the context of what isn't true. It's contrast. That's all. But now we're going to shift the focus and claim ourselves as Christ. Claim ourselves as the resurrected one. Take a breath with me. I want to share something quickly with you, a short story of how powerful this is. I have a friend from my childhood, and she was really troubled when we were approaching high school. And as we were approaching high school, she kind of went away. She literally ran away. And I would hear stories about her. And there were drugs, and she got totally lost in this other world. And I was close with her family, and so I would hear for a time about her. And then I went off on my life and went away. And I would say 20 years later, I came back to where I grew up, and I was in a restaurant, and I saw her parents, and I was afraid to go say hi to them, because I knew I was going to ask about their daughter. But I couldn't not. Because in my mind, I was thinking the worst. I was remembering her as she was in the past. And when I talked with them, they had this great story and this wonderful news of how she had been in recovery and her life had been restored. And I was so happy, and I got her number. And we met for coffee, and we sat there for 4 hours as if we had never parted. Her life had been restored, and we became friends after that. Do you know her biggest challenge in her life was shaking who she had been in the eyes of others? And when enough people see somebody that way, guess what? They start to believe it themselves. So that's about a friend, but how do we do that again to ourselves? This week, I do want you to really look in the mirror. And as you walk this week, in your heart space, begin to re-know yourself in a different way. Approach the mystery of who you are with curiosity. Gee, I wonder what I think about this. Gee, I wonder how I feel. I want you to approach re-knowing yourself with wonder and curiosity like a mystery that's unfolding. I'm going to invite you to be willing to take the time with yourself, your true self, to remember again who you are. Might help if you even took a little baby picture out of yourself and put it on the nightstand or wherever you may meditate to remember your innocence. And then I'm going to have you look in your eyes and remember your power. Oh yeah, I made this all up. I'm going to be called Gacky. You get to say who you are, what you are, how you serve. And look at your life just as it is and just as it isn't. As if it has been this masterful creation. Because it has been. And in any moment you can choose again. You are not what you have made. Who you are, who we are, is changeless. Can't change up on you. Be held, beloved, in the mind and the heart of God, of all that is. So as we close, take this breath with me. And hear this. To remember who you are is to begin to comprehend what you are not. And what you are not is separate. Although indeed you are individualized spectacularly, but you are part of the whole. Reconciliation, a revolutionary act, the release of separation, a releasing of an idea of self, and truly nothing more, is an act of truth at the cost of the lie that it concealed. There is no loss in this, only gain. True dominion comes when an individual is reconciled and cannot deny the divine in anyone or anything. So you look in the mirror, you cannot deny the divine in yourself, in anyone. Look around. I mean, look around. Bend that little neck of yours. Look at your brother and sister and just imagine that you no longer deny that they are divine and perfect right as they are. That you see beyond the appearance and you see the truth of who they are. Yeah. And so that is what we're doing as the resurrected self. This is how we walk. This is our identity. And I got to tell you, it's a worry-free life. It's a worry-free life.